Look, driving for Uber isn't exactly a dream job, but it pays the bills. Back in 2022, I was living in this small town called Harrow, about an hour outside Pittsburgh. I'd moved there after a rough breakup, needed a fresh start. The town's quiet. Think one main street, a diner, a gas station, and a whole lot of woods. I started driving for Uber because it was flexible and I could work nights, which suited me since I wasn't sleeping much anyway. Most rides were boring, drunk college kids, tired shift workers, the occasional out-of-towner. But one night in November, I picked up a passenger who changed how I see this job forever. This is my story, and trust me, it's not one I tell lightly. It was a Thursday, around 11:45 p.m. I'd just dropped off a couple at the diner on Route 19. My app pinged with a new request. Pickup was maybe 5 minutes away, at a gravel lot near the old mill by Harrow Creek. The name on the ride was Lila. No profile picture, just a blank avatar, which happens sometimes. The drop-off was listed as an address I didn't recognize, about 15 miles out, deep in the back roads. I accepted the ride and headed over, my headlights cutting through the fog that always seems to roll in after dark around here. The mill's been abandoned since the 80s. Rusted machinery, boarded up windows, the kind of place kids dare each other to sneak into. When I pulled into the lot, it was empty except for one figure standing near the creek's edge, barely visible under a flickering streetlight. She was wearing a long coat, scarf wrapped tight around her face, hands tucked into her pockets. I slowed down, rolled my window halfway and called out, "Lila?" She turned, nodded once, and walked toward the car. Her steps were slow, deliberate, like she wasn't in any hurry. She opened the back door and slid in behind me without a word. I started the trip and checked the app to confirm the destination. This says 1427 Old Quarry Road. That right? I asked, glancing at her in the rear-view mirror. Her scarf covered most of her face, but her eyes caught mine, dark, unblinking. "Yes," she said, her voice soft but sharp, like she was biting off the word. I nodded, put the car in drive, and headed out. Something about her felt off. Not rude, just strange, like she was holding her breath or something. The first few minutes were quiet. I'm used to silent passengers, so I didn't think much of it. I turned on the radio low, some classic rock station to fill the void. But every time I glanced in the mirror, she was staring at the back of my head. Not at her phone, not out the window, just at me. Her eyes didn't waver. I tried to shrug it off, told myself I was just tired. "Cold night, huh?" I said, trying to break the tension. She didn't answer, just kept staring. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. About 10 minutes in, we were on a stretch of road flanked by dense woods. No streetlights, just my high beams and the occasional reflective sign. The GPS said we were still 10 miles out, but the signal was spotty, kept glitching. I noticed she hadn't moved since she got in. Same posture, hands in her pockets, scarf still covering her face. I tried again. "You from around here?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. There was a long pause, then she said, "Not anymore." Her voice was colder this time, almost like a whisper. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and kept driving. Then, things got weirder. My phone buzzed, not the app, just a random notification. I glanced at it, and the screen flickered, like it was struggling to stay on. The GPS map glitched again, showing us off the road, in the middle of the woods. I tapped it, annoyed, but it didn't fix. "Damn signal," I muttered under my breath. That's when she spoke, unprompted. "You shouldn't trust those things," she said. "They don't know the way." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, tech's great till it isn't. You know this road?" She didn't answer, just leaned forward slightly, close enough that I could feel her presence behind me. "Keep going," she said. "Don't stop." My stomach twisted. Something in her tone wasn't right. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. I kept driving, but my eyes kept darting to the mirror. Her scarf had slipped a little, and I could see part of her jawline, pale, almost gray under the dim light. I told myself it was just the shadows playing tricks, but then I noticed something else. The car felt colder, not like a draft, but like the air itself was heavier, pressing against my chest. I cracked my window, hoping fresh air would help, but it didn't. We were maybe 5 miles from the address when she spoke again. "Pull over," she said suddenly. I blinked, confused. Here? We're in the middle of nowhere. The road was pitch black, trees looming on both sides, no houses or lights anywhere. "Pull over," she repeated, her voice sharper. I hesitated, then eased onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. I put the car in park but kept the engine running. "Everything okay?" I asked, turning slightly to look at her. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time I saw something in them. Not just blankness, but hunger. "Wait here," she said, then opened the door and stepped out. She walked toward the woods, her coat blending into the darkness. I watched her silhouette fade, expecting her to stop or turn back, but she didn't. She just kept going until I couldn't see her anymore. I sat there, engine idling, my heart pounding. The ride was still active in the app, so I couldn't just leave without risking a penalty. But every second felt wrong. I checked my phone, still glitching, now showing no signal at all. I tried to restart the app, but it froze. 2 minutes passed, then 5. I was about to end the trip manually when I heard it, a rustling in the woods like footsteps on leaves. I squinted into the darkness, expecting to see her coming back, but nothing moved. The rustling stopped, and the silence was worse. My hands were shaking as I gripped the wheel. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something in the rearview mirror, not outside, but inside the car. A shadow in the back seat, right where she'd been sitting. I whipped around, but the seat was empty. My breath caught in my throat. I turned back to the windshield, ready to peel out, but before I could shift gears, the back door opened again. She slid in, same coat, same scarf, but something was different. Her hands weren't in her pockets anymore, they were resting on her lap, and her fingers looked wrong, too long, too thin. I forced myself to speak. "You good? Ready to go?" She didn't answer, just stared at the back of my head again. "Take me back," she said finally. "Back where?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Where you found me." I didn't argue. I pulled back onto the road, heading toward the mill, my mind racing. The air in the car was freezing now, my breath visible in the dim light. She didn't speak, but I could feel her watching me, closer than before. Every time I checked the mirror, her eyes were there, unblinking. I pushed the gas harder, desperate to get back to the lot. When we finally reached the mill, I parked under the same flickering streetlight. "Here we are," I said, trying to sound calm. She didn't move. Seconds dragged on. Then, in that same sharp whisper, she said, "You shouldn't have stopped." Before I could respond, she opened the door and stepped out. But instead of walking toward the creek, she turned and looked at me through the window. Her scarf had fallen completely now, and her face, God, her face, it wasn't right. Too pale, too hollow, like something wearing skin that didn't fit. She smiled, a slow, unnatural stretch, then turned and walked into the darkness. I didn't wait. I floored it, tires spitting gravel, and didn't stop until I was back in town. When I got home, I checked the app. The trip was gone. No record of Lila, no payment, nothing. Like it never happened. I reported it to Uber, but they said there was no data for that ride. I haven't driven past the mill since, but sometimes late at night, I swear I see that same flickering streetlight in my rearview mirror. even when I'm nowhere near Harrow Creek. I've been driving for Uber for about 3 years now, mostly deliveries since the pandemic hit. Uber Eats is steady work in my area, a rural stretch outside of Asheville, North Carolina. It's all winding roads, scattered houses, and the kind of quiet that feels heavy at night. I usually do late shifts because the tips are better, and I don't mind the dark, or at least I didn't until last summer. This one delivery, back in July 2024, still keeps me up at night. It's not just what happened. It's the way it made me question what I saw, what I heard, and whether I was ever really alone in my car. It was a muggy Friday night around 10:30 p.m. I'd just finished a long shift dropping off burgers and pizzas to college kids and families. My app pinged with one last order before I planned to call it quits. A delivery from a 24-hour diner on the edge of town to an address about 12 miles out. A place called Blackthorn Lane. The customer's name was Evan. No special instructions. Just leave at door. Standard stuff. I picked up the order. A single milkshake and a side of fries, which I thought was odd but not unheard of, and headed out. Blackthorn Lane is one of those roads you don't notice unless you're looking for it. Narrow, unpaved, with thick pines crowding in on both sides. My GPS kept rerouting, like it couldn't decide where the house was. By the time I found the turnoff, it was pushing 11 p.m., and the fog was so thick my headlights barely cut through it. The address was a small, one-story house set back from the road. No mailbox, no porch light. Just a faint glow from what I guessed was a living room window. I parked in the dirt driveway, grabbed the bag, and checked the app again. Leave at door, it said. Easy enough. I stepped out, the air sticky and smelling like pine and damp earth. The house looked off, not abandoned, but neglected. The lawn was overgrown, and there was this old swing set in the yard, rusted and creaking in the breeze. I walked up to the front door, set the bag down, and took the required photo for the app. As I turned to head back to my car, I heard a noise, a low, rhythmic tapping, like someone knocking on glass. I froze, thinking it was coming from the house. I looked back, but the door was still closed, the bag untouched. The tapping stopped. I shook it off, blamed it on the wind or maybe an animal, and got back in my car. I marked the delivery as complete and started to pull out, but my phone buzzed with a new notification. It was a message from Evan. "You forgot the straw." I frowned. The diner always includes straws with drinks, so I checked the bag's photo on my phone. Sure enough, there it was, tucked next to the milkshake cup. I messaged back, "Straws in the bag, left it at the door." No response. I waited a minute, figuring I'd done my part, and started driving back toward the main road, about a mile down Blackthorn Lane. My headlights caught something that made my heart skip. There was a figure standing on the side of the road, half hidden in the fog, tall, wearing a dark jacket, just standing there. I slowed down, thinking maybe it was someone needing help, but as I got closer, they stepped back into the trees and vanished. I told myself it was probably just a neighbor, but my hands were clammy on the wheel. I kept driving, checking my mirrors every few seconds. Then, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Evan. "Come back. I need the straw." I cursed under my breath. I'd already confirmed the delivery, and I wasn't about to turn around for a 50-cent straw. I typed back, "It's in the bag. Check again." No reply. I kept driving, but the unease wouldn't leave me. The road felt longer than it should have, like I wasn't making progress. My GPS was useless, just a spinning circle. I turned up the radio to calm my nerves, but it was all static. 10 minutes later, another message. "Please, I'm still waiting. I ignored it. Then another. You're close, just turn around. My stomach dropped. Close. I was miles from Blackthorn Lane by now. I pulled over, my hands shaking, and checked the app. The delivery was still marked complete. But Evan's profile was blank. No picture, no rating, just the name. I tried calling the number linked to the account, but it went straight to a generic voicemail. I sat there, engine idling, trying to decide what to do. That's when I heard it. The same tapping from before, but this time it was coming from the back of my car. Slow, deliberate, like knuckles on the rear windshield. I whipped around, but the back seat was empty. My trunk light wasn't on, and there was nothing outside that I could see through the fog. I locked the doors, my pulse hammering, and floored it. The tapping stopped, but now I could hear something else. A faint rustling, like someone shifting in the back seat. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just kept driving, telling myself it was the car, the road, anything but what my gut was screaming. When I finally hit the main road, my phone buzzed again. Another message. You shouldn't have left. I didn't read it until I was parked at a gas station under bright lights. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hold the phone. I reported the issue to Uber, explaining the creepy messages and the tapping. They said they'd look into it, but when I checked the app later, the delivery was gone. No record of Evan, no messages, nothing. Like the whole thing never happened. The next day I drove by Blackthorn Lane in daylight just to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. The house was there, same as before, but the swing set was gone. Not broken or moved, just gone, like it was never there. I asked a buddy who's lived in Asheville his whole life about the address. He said nobody's lived on Blackthorn Lane for years, not since some family disappeared back in the 90s. I don't drive deliveries out that way anymore, but sometimes, when I'm alone in my car at night, I hear that tapping, and I wonder if Evan's still waiting for his straw. I don't usually take Uber. I'm more of a public transit guy. Cheaper, predictable. But last spring, in April 2024, I was in Chicago for a work conference, staying at a hotel downtown. After a late night of networking drinks, I missed the last train back to my hotel. It was pushing 1 a.m. I was exhausted, and the streets were emptying out. I pulled up the Uber app, booked a ride, and figured I'd be back in bed in 20 minutes. The driver's name was Victor, driving a black sedan. The app said he'd arrive in 4 minutes. What happened during that ride still makes my skin crawl, and I haven't opened the Uber app since. I was standing outside a bar on Michigan Avenue, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement from an earlier rain. A black sedan pulled up right on time, license plate matching the app. I leaned down to the driver's window. Victor? For James? The guy behind the wheel nodded, barely looking at me. He was older, maybe 50s, with a graying beard and a baseball cap pulled low. Hop in, he said, voice gravelly, like he smoked too much. I slid into the back seat, the car smelling faintly of leather and something sharp, like cleaning fluid. I confirmed the hotel address, and he grunted, pulling into traffic. The first few minutes were fine. Chicago's nightlife was still buzzing. Taxis, neon signs, people spilling out of bars. Victor didn't talk, which was okay by me. I was scrolling through emails on my phone, trying to stay awake. But then I noticed we weren't heading toward my hotel. The app's map showed us veering west, away from the loop, toward a sketchier part of town. I leaned forward. Hey, think we missed a turn back there. Hotel's the other way. Victor didn't respond, just kept driving, his hands steady on the wheel. I repeated myself, louder. You hear me? We're going the wrong way. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes catching the streetlights. Shortcut, he said, his voice flat. I checked the app again. The route was completely off, showing us heading toward an industrial area near the river. My stomach tightened. "This isn't a shortcut," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "Can you follow the app's route?" He didn't answer, just turned up the radio, some staticky talk show I couldn't make out. I noticed his phone, mounted on the dash, wasn't even showing the Uber app, just a blank screen. I started to sweat despite the chilly air coming through the cracked driver's window. The city around us was changing. Fewer lights, more shuttered warehouses, and empty lots. I tried the door handle quietly, just to check. Locked. My heart was pounding now. "Look, man," I said, leaning forward again. "I need you to turn around. Now." Victor chuckled, a low, dry sound that made my blood run cold. "Relax," he said. "We're almost there." Almost where? My hotel was miles behind us. I pulled out my phone to call 911, but the signal was gone. No bars, no Wi-Fi, nothing. I glanced at Victor, and he was watching me in the mirror, his eyes locked on mine. "Phone's not gonna help you out here," he said, almost casual. I froze, my thumb hovering over the screen. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't answer, just turned onto a narrow street lined with rusted chain-link fences and dark buildings. The radio cut out completely, leaving just the hum of the engine and the sound of my own breathing. Then I noticed something in the footwell behind the passenger seat, a duffel bag, unzipped, with what looked like rope and duct tape spilling out. My mouth went dry. I tried to think straight, to stay calm. "Stop the car," I said, loud enough to sound serious but not panicked. "I'm getting out." Victor didn't slow down. Instead, he reached over and flipped open the glove compartment. I couldn't see what was inside, but the way his hand lingered there made my gut scream to get out. I banged on the door. "Let me out, now!" He ignored me, turning onto a deserted road that ran alongside the river, the water black and still under the moonlight. I was done playing nice. I leaned forward, grabbed the back of his seat, and shouted, "Stop the damn car, or I'm calling the cops!" That's when he slammed on the brakes so hard I lurched forward, my phone flying out of my hand and under the front seat. The car screeched to a stop in the middle of the road. Victor turned around, fully facing me for the first time. His face was wrong, too calm, like he was studying me. "You don't want to do that," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "Get out, and you'll wish you hadn't." I didn't care anymore. I yanked at the door handle again, and this time it opened. I stumbled out onto the pavement, my legs shaky, and sprinted toward the nearest building, a boarded-up warehouse about 50 yards away. I heard the car door slam behind me, then footsteps, fast and heavy. I didn't look back, just ran until I reached the warehouse, ducking behind a stack of pallets. My heart was hammering so loud, I thought it'd give me away. I crouched there, listening, but the footsteps stopped. The street was silent except for the distant sound of the river. I waited, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10, until I was sure he was gone. My phone was still in the car, so I couldn't call for help. I crept out, sticking to the shadows, and made my way back toward the main road. It took me an hour to find a gas station, where I borrowed a clerk's phone to call a real Uber. When I finally got back to my hotel, I reported the ride to Uber and the police. I gave them Victor's name, the car details, everything I could remember. The cops said they'd look into it, but Uber's response was worse. They had no record of the ride. No Victor, no trip history, nothing. Like I'd never booked it. The next day, I went through my email receipts to prove I wasn't crazy. The confirmation was there, but when I clicked the link to the trip details, It was a dead end. I still don't know who Victor was or what he wanted. But every time I close my eyes, I see that duffel bag, the rope, and his face in the rearview mirror, watching me like he knew something I didn't. I take the train now, no matter how late it is.